I knew that Christmas Eve had gone off course the moment my daughter-in-law set 2 glasses of eggnog on the table. One glass had a cinnamon stick. That one was for my wife. The other was meant for me. I saw Vicky turn her back. Her hand hesitated, just for a second. Then a small pill disappeared into Eleanor's glass. No one noticed. Everyone was laughing. I stood there frozen, wondering why in a house full of holiday lights I was being forced to choose between silence and ruining the entire night. Before we go on, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next dramatic family stories. And if you're listening to this story anywhere on your phone, your computer, or your TV, leave a comment and let me know. Now, let's continue with what happened right after that moment, when the eggnog glasses were switched. After that moment, I didn't say a word. Years in my line of work taught me this. Some details only appear once. If you miss them, the truth quietly closes the door. I looked around the living room. The fireplace burned steady. The Christmas tree stood carefully decorated just like every year. Tiny lights reflected off the glassware, making everything seem gentler, safer than it really was. Eleanor stood beside me. She always loved gatherings like this, even though her health no longer allowed her to drink strong alcohol. I remembered that clearly. So when Vicky came out of the kitchen with the tray of drinks, I knew something was off. Not because of the eggnog, because of her eyes. Too focused, too calculated, for what should have been a simple family ritual. Vicky said it was a special Christmas recipe. She smiled, her voice light as if offering a small kindness. Thomas stood next to her, nodding, completely trusting. I didn't. I watched how Vicky placed the glass with the cinnamon stick into Eleanor's hand, half a beat slower. Just one beat, but enough for me to notice her hand tremble slightly. Then stop, as she turned away. I've lived long enough to know this. Danger is rarely loud. It usually shows up inside moments people call normal. I didn't shout. I didn't rush forward. I simply slowed my steps, pretended to adjust a chair, and kept my gaze low enough to avoid suspicion. Christmas music filled the room. Vicky leaned down to adjust the speaker. That was the only opening. I took one more step. Not fast, not rushed. I lifted my glass and set it down exactly where the cinnamon glass had been. Eleanor's glass slid gently toward me, a small movement, quiet enough that no one in the room realized the switch had already happened. My heartbeat settled, strangely calm. Some decisions once made leave no room for panic. Eleanor didn't know a thing. She smiled at me and lifted her glass just like every year. I nodded back, wearing the calm I'd practiced for decades. We clinked glasses. The soft sound of glass blended into the laughter around us. I raised the glass to my lips, the familiar scent of eggnog mixed with cinnamon. I took a very small sip, just enough for others to see. I didn't swallow. I held the liquid in my mouth longer than normal, then turned away, pretending to cough. Vicky looked at me. That look was no longer polite. It paused, measured, like she was checking a result. I understood immediately. I bent down, pretending to look for a napkin, and quietly spat the foreign substance into an empty medicine bottle I always carry. I wasn't sure what I was holding, but I knew it didn't belong in that drink. Eleanor set her glass down earlier than usual. She said she felt a little tired. Vicky moved in at once, her concern carefully measured so others could hear. She suggested Eleanor go upstairs and rest early, because Christmas is long and everyone needs their strength. Thomas nodded, thinking it was kindness. I didn't. I rested my hand on the back of the chair and stood up slowly. I said Eleanor just needed to sit a little longer, that she was fine. My voice stayed even, no argument. I felt a few eyes turn toward me, as if I had interrupted an invisible plan. The air in the room shifted. No one said it out loud, but the warmth from before had thinned. I saw it when Vicky's hand tightened for a moment, then relaxed. She turned to me and smiled again, but that smile never reached her eyes. I sat back down beside Eleanor, my glass still in my hand. I didn't drink anymore. I let time pass, listening to the music, the conversations, and the brief silences in between. With every minute, I became more certain. Switching the glasses wasn't just instinct, it was a line, and I had just crossed it. As the lights on the Christmas tree reflected off the eggnog in my hand, I understood something clearly. This Christmas night would not end like the others. Not because of gifts, not because of wishes, but because something had been exposed. even if no one else could see it yet. I kept the pill bottle in my coat pocket for the rest of the evening, as if letting go of it would send everything out of control. The Christmas music shifted to a faster tune. It was time to open gifts. People moved toward the tree, dragging chairs, calling each other's names. No one noticed that I stepped back half a pace, just enough to stand outside that circle of excitement. Eleanor settled into her familiar armchair. I rested my hand on her shoulder and whispered that she could take her time, no rush. She nodded. Her eyes looked tired, but trusting. That look told me everything. I couldn't act too fast. If I was wrong, I would ruin the holiday. If I was right, then silence for now was the only thing keeping everyone safe. Vicky moved quickly among the guests, handing out gifts. She spoke louder than usual, pointing out that Eleanor looked worn down. That age is nothing to joke about. A few people glanced at me, curiosity mixed with doubt. I didn't argue. I just smiled, the calm smile of an overly worried husband. Then Vicky added something else, very lightly. She said I should probably get my health checked too, that I'd been forgetful lately. The comment wasn't aimed directly at me, but I knew exactly who it was for. Thomas stood beside her, uncomfortable. He didn't disagree. He didn't agree either. That hesitation from my son hurt more than any open attack. I left the living room, saying I needed extra batteries for the camera. No one paid attention. The study at the end of the hall was quiet, lit by a soft yellow lamp. I closed the door, sat at the desk, and opened the pill bottle. The tablet rested at the bottom, plain, no color, no smell. I'd seen enough to know it wasn't harmless. I took out my phone and texted Stern. We'd worked together for years before he moved into medicine. I didn't explain much. I sent a photo of the pill and a short message, please confirm. Dangerous interaction with heart medication. I set the phone down and slowed my breathing, the same way I used to when reviewing a complex plan line by line. While I waited, I opened a drawer and pulled out an old folder. I hadn't kept it here by accident. A few weeks earlier, Vicky had offered to reorganize the family paperwork. She said it would be easier for everyone. I agreed, but I never gave her full control. Drafts of revised trusts, practice signatures, notes scribbled in the margins. They all pointed in the same direction, reducing my role, pushing Eleanor out of decisions. My phone vibrated. Stern confirmed it. High-dose risperidone. Not appropriate, especially dangerous when combined with heart medication. I read the message twice, not because I doubted it, but because I needed to keep myself from reacting too quickly. From that moment on, this was no longer a misunderstanding. I went back to the living room. The laughter was still there, but thinner now. Disconnected, I stood at the edge of the room and watched. Vicky was whispering to Thomas. Her hand rested on his arm. She said something that made him nod. Then Thomas stepped forward and raised his voice, asking for everyone's attention. Dad, he said, looking at me before we opened the last gift, Vicky and I want to share something. A special Christmas present. The room went quiet. Eleanor looked up, confused. I stepped beside her. I didn't interrupt Thomas. I let my son speak, because I knew this mattered. Not just for tonight. He talked about responsibility, about the family's future, about making sure things were managed steadily. He used safe words, reasonable words. I heard my name, along with phrases like recently pressure fatigue. I didn't react. I just watched Vicky. She avoided my eyes. But her smile was perfect, practiced. When Thomas finished, I spoke, just loud enough for the whole room to hear. I said that before anything was announced, I also had a gift. Not for one person, for the entire family. I took out my phone, but didn't turn it on yet. Instead, I placed the pill bottle on the table right among the carefully wrapped presents. I spoke slowly. I said there are gifts that shouldn't be opened before you understand where they come from. I didn't accuse. I didn't draw conclusions. I only asked questions. The room froze. I felt the tension rise, but I kept my voice steady. I said I needed a few minutes before we went any further. No one objected, maybe because everyone could feel it. This night had already taken a different turn. I turned to Eleanor and took her hand. She looked at me, worried but trusting, and I knew then there was no stepping back. Not because of pride, but because some things, once you see them, you can never pretend they didn't happen. I didn't wait for anyone's permission. While the room was still locked in that tense silence, the phone in my hand vibrated once more. Stern sent a final short message confirming every possible risk if Eleanor had taken that pill. I turned off the screen, like closing the last step of verification. From that moment on, I was no longer speaking from doubt. I looked at Thomas. Then I looked at Vicky. I said that before the family listened to any more plans, I wanted everyone to see something. Something recorded, not by emotion, but by time. I walked toward the television near the fireplace and connected my phone. No one stopped me. Maybe because they all felt it. We were standing at a threshold, and no one wanted to be the first to step back. The screen lit up. The video began. Security footage from outside my study 3 weeks earlier. Not cinematic, not polished, but clear enough to recognize faces and voices. Vicky appeared on screen, sitting across from a man I had never seen before. Her voice was low, steady, without hesitation. She talked about reducing our influence, about making financial decisions more manageable. She mentioned age, health, the need to close old doors. I stood there listening to each sentence like a cold briefing, not about a project, but about my own family. No one in the living room spoke. I heard Eleanor's quiet breath beside me. Thomas stood frozen. I didn't turn to look at my son. I let the video finish saying what it needed to say. When the screen went dark, I turned off the television and faced the room. I didn't raise my voice. I said that some plans are built very carefully, but fall apart because of one small detail, like a glass being switched. I placed the pill bottle on the table next to the remote control. 2 small objects, enough to connect every loose thread of this night. Vicky spoke first. She said I had misunderstood, that the video was edited, that I was overreacting. She turned to Thomas looking for support. Thomas looked at her, then at me. His eyes shifted like someone realizing too late that there were things he had ignored for far too long. I didn't argue. I asked Thomas one question. Did he know about the documents in the study drawer? Did he know about the drafts already prepared to sign, just waiting for a reason that sounded reasonable? He didn't answer right away. His silence answered for him. I turned to Vicky and said, I didn't need explanations right now. I only needed her to look at the pill on the table and tell everyone why it had ended up in Eleanor's glass. She stepped back half a step, just half a step, but enough for everyone to see the imbalance. I repeated slowly that this Christmas night was supposed to be about wishes and gifts, but someone had chosen to bring something else, something that didn't belong at a celebration. I didn't use heavy words. I didn't need to. The looks around the room already understood. Thomas sank into a chair, his hands clasped together. He spoke softly, almost to himself. He said he didn't know, that he only wanted things to be stable. I heard the confusion in his voice, and I knew my son was standing between 2 opposing realities. I stepped closer and placed my hand on his shoulder. I told him that stability is never built on deception, and that some decisions, once they cross a line, can no longer be called harmless. I didn't blame my son. I simply made clear what I was protecting. Vicky wasn't smiling anymore. She looked around as if searching for an exit, but in that moment this room had no space left for careful words. I said that the real Christmas gift tonight wasn't inside the boxes. It was the truth, placed under the lights, where it could no longer be hidden. No one applauded. No one reacted dramatically. Just a shared, heavy understanding that the old order had been broken. I felt it when I looked at Eleanor. She squeezed my hand tighter, a quiet reminder that I had done the right thing. I took a deep breath. I knew what had been revealed tonight was only the beginning. The night wasn't over, and this family, from the moment those glasses were switched, had entered a new chapter, one where there was no longer room for carefully arranged smiles. When I set the pill bottle on the table, the air in the room seemed to thicken. No one spoke. People just looked at one another, caught between shock and confusion. I took a slow breath and kept my voice steady. This was the moment that demanded calm more than anything else. One wrong word could shatter everything. One wrong move could destroy Christmas completely. I turned to Thomas. My son was still standing there, his face torn between confusion and fear. I spoke gently, telling him I needed him to understand exactly what had happened. I handed him the papers I had taken from the drawer. Draft, trusts, notes, practice signatures. I told him these were undeniable proof of Vicky's plan to remove both Eleanor and me from our own lives. His hands trembled as he held them. I saw disappointment and fear flash through his eyes. Vicky opened her mouth, trying to explain, to justify herself. But every word only made the truth heavier. I didn't argue with her. I didn't need to. I stepped forward, picked up the pill bottle, and placed it in the center of the room. Then I looked straight at her. "This," I said calmly, "is the Christmas gift my daughter-in-law prepared for my wife. You wanted her unconscious. And the only reason no one was harmed is because I noticed." The room went silent. Eleanor sank back slightly into her chair, her hand gripping mine. I saw fear in her eyes. Worry. I exhaled, but I didn't let go of her hand. I didn't need thanks. As long as she was safe, that was enough. I turned back to Vicky, my voice even cold. "You put everyone in danger for your own gain. And now it's all exposed." Then Vicky screamed something I had never expected. "Thomas, he's not your real son." The room erupted in shock. Thomas staggered back a step, eyes wide, mouth open. I looked at him and spoke slowly. "That's true. You're not my biological son, but my love for you has always been real. That's the difference between me and her." I felt my heart racing, but my voice didn't rise. I didn't need anger. The truth was enough. Thomas shook as he stepped closer to me. I placed my hand on his shoulder. Firm, steady. I told him that from this moment on, everything had to be transparent. No more schemes, no more deception. Guests began to leave the room. Whispers, avoided glances. No one wanted to stay inside a space split open by truth and resentment. I understood. What Vicky had done didn't just ruin Christmas. It created fractures that wouldn't heal quickly. I called the police. Vicky was escorted out of the house. She resisted loudly. I didn't interfere. Some things have to be handled the right way. Thomas stood beside me, watching. I saw something change in his eyes. Awareness, mixed with regret. When the house finally quieted, I turned to my son. I told him I understood how betrayal can make a person angry, lost, unsteady. But I also told him this, that whether or not we share blood, he is my son. Love and responsibility aren't built on genetics. They're built on actions, on care, on honesty. Thomas looked at me, his eyes wet. His voice trembled. "Dad, I understand now. I never wanted to lose you or Mom." I nodded. The connection wasn't fully repaired. Not instantly. But it was the first real step. I reminded him that switching the glasses wasn't just about protecting his mother. It was about protecting the family, protecting the truth, protecting trust that had nearly collapsed. I wasn't angry, just firm. Thomas lowered his head, silent, finally grasping the weight of everything that had happened. That night, the house was still glowing with lights. The tree still sparkled, but everything felt different. After the guests left and Eleanor went to rest, Thomas and I sat together. We spoke quietly, slowly, no rushing. I told him that from now on there would be no secrets. Every decision would be built on trust. A few weeks later, Thomas moved back into our home. We reorganized the paperwork together. Everything clear, everything open. I finally told him why I stayed silent, why I switched the eggnog that Christmas. Not to punish, not to control, but to protect his mother, to protect the family, to protect the truth. He understood. He realized that one simple act had saved us from something far worse. Then one quiet evening, Thomas brought me a glass of warm milk instead of coffee. He said softly, "Dad, thank you for switching the eggnog that night. I am your son." I smiled, took the glass, and drank it all. This time, I knew what was being offered was given with real love. No lies, no hidden intentions. That Christmas night didn't end perfectly, but it marked a turning point. Exposure, confrontation, and the beginning of healing. Our family didn't return to what it once was, but truth and genuine care became the foundation for rebuilding trust. I looked at Eleanor beside me. I looked at Thomas holding that glass of milk, and I knew that one small, quiet decision made at exactly the right moment had saved our family from a disaster far greater than anything lights or gifts could ever hide. A few weeks after that chaotic Christmas night, the atmosphere in our house felt completely different. No constant holiday music, no forced smiles, no watchful glances. Instead, there was a different kind of silence. Not heavy, but steady, calm. A silence that carried relief and a sense of control returning. Eleanor was still weak, but she was finally resting and being cared for the right way. Her smile came back, gentle, but alive again. Thomas had moved back home. I could tell it wasn't just about living with family. It was his way of facing himself, of owning his mistakes, of learning how to start over. We began reorganizing everything together. Trust documents, financial agreements, anything tied to the estate. No secrets, no hidden agendas. I walked Thomas through every step, every decision I had stayed silent about, every action I had taken to protect this family. He listened, really listened. I watched his eyes change as the weight of it all settled in, and I knew he understood something important. Trust is the most valuable thing a family has. One afternoon, sunlight spilled through the living room windows. Thomas and I sat across from each other, each holding a mug of warm milk. I didn't need to say much. One look told me he understood. What happened that Christmas night wasn't a game. It was a test. I reminded him gently that truth always has a cost, and that sometimes small decisions, like switching a glass of eggnog, can save an entire family from devastating consequences. Thomas nodded. His voice shook, but it was sincere. Dad, I'll never forget. In the weeks that followed, we slowly rebuilt our family rhythm. Eleanor returned to her quiet routines, tending the plants with me, preparing simple meals, talking slowly without urgency. Thomas joined us, not as a child, but as a grown man, one who accepted responsibility, one who understood the value of family. The quiet moments became precious. We no longer needed schemes or control to stay together. Our bond was built on honesty, on the smallest actions done with care. One evening, as I was getting ready to rest, Thomas approached the table. He handed me a mug of warm milk, his hands slightly unsteady. Dad, he said softly, thank you for switching the eggnog that night. I am your son. I smiled. Not because of the words alone, but because I felt the connection return. Not through blood, but through love, responsibility, and trust. I lifted the mug and drank it down. This time everything tasted right. No doubt, no fear. I looked at Eleanor. She smiled gently and rested her hand on my shoulder. We didn't need to say anything more. Peace had returned. But this time it was conscious peace, built on truth and acknowledgement. No more manipulation, no more calculation. Just family, real family, standing together in a house filled with the soft light of winter. I understand now. There are no perfect endings that happen by accident. But that Christmas night and the weeks that followed gave us the right ending. We faced the truth. We protected one another, and we learned how to trust again. The schemes were exposed, but the bond between father and son, between husband and wife, grew stronger. Thomas learned that responsibility and love rise above ambition. Eleanor was safe and cared for, and I, after a lifetime of restraint, found a rare, complete sense of peace. That night before going to bed, I stood by the window. The garden outside was dusted with a thin layer of snow. I saw Thomas and Eleanor talking under the warm yellow light, soft smiles on their faces. I took a deep breath, felt the warmth settle in my chest, and knew that whatever came next, this family was strong enough to face it, not by luck, but by honesty, vigilance, and real love. In the end, I realized this one quiet decision on Christmas night changed everything. It didn't just save Eleanor from danger. It brought Thomas back. It taught him responsibility and compassion. That Christmas didn't end with grandeur or spectacle. It ended with something far more real. True peace, a father and his son, and trust restored. I smiled, finished my warm milk, and knew. This time, everything had been given straight from the heart. No fear, no doubt. And if you've stayed with this story until the very end, I truly appreciate your time. Please give it a like if it moved you. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next family drama stories, and share it with anyone you think might care. Thank you for listening, and for walking with the Harrison family through a Christmas night filled with trial and love. Your support is what allows these stories to be told.